And to continue the dream of Apollo.
We stand on the shoulders of giants that came before us.
And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon.
Apollo.
The goal of SpaceX is to try to advance rocket technology, and in particular to try to crack a problem that I think is vital for humanity to become a spacefaring civilization.
And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast. And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast.
And now Elon Musk is the card. But Elon Musk is sending up huge rockets into the space. He's sending these rockets up. Do you know what he plans to do next? He's going to put people on them and send them up to the moon. The people that have the money, they're going to go up to the moon. What are they going to do? They're going to look out the windows and photograph the earth. Think of all these people that are going to be going up. And this is a few years, it's not long in the future. And they're going to be photographing this round, blue, beautiful planet out here in space. Thousands of photographs and videos from the space station as it moved in the heavens above the earth. Such a magnificent sight, it took his breath away. Right now, you can log on to the internet if you want to. And you can go to the International Space Station, the ISS, and you can get a live feed from that space station. Right now, you can watch it as it moves across the face of the earth.
So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. And I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns.
After this I beheld, and lo, another, like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy.
And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is.
Let's start talking about space and what you've been doing there. Obviously, you've had some success landing the rocket.
Probably, and the most significant thing is being able to land an orbit-class rocket.
And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men.
If you spin a marble or a coin on a coin funnel, when it's far out, it sort of spins slowly, and then as it gets closer, it spins faster and faster. And if you were to start at the bottom of the coin funnel and you wanted to exit, you'd spin it horizontally, and it would spin out, and that's really how you get to orbit. Yeah, so the gravity well is like a funnel.
Why you want to land on a ship in the ocean?
Because in order to get to orbit, all that matters is your horizontal velocity. Your altitude doesn't really matter. In fact, the force of gravity at say the sort of nominal boundary of space, 100 kilometers, is almost exactly the same as it is on the surface of the Earth. So like if it's a few percent lower than the surface of the Earth. So in order to go up and stay up, the only thing that matters is how fast are you going horizontal to the Earth's surface. So you have that outward radial acceleration, or think of it like maybe like tetherball or something like that. It's really that outward acceleration is the thing that matters. And so when the rocket is going to orbit, the only reason it's going up is to get out of the thick part of the atmosphere. Because at high velocity, the atmosphere is thick as molasses. And so it goes up very briefly, but if you look at a long exposure of the rocket's trajectory, you'll see it goes up, but immediately curves over and starts going horizontal. And so at the point at which the point at which the stages separate, there's two stages.
After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured, and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns.
The primary boost stage, which is the most expensive part of the rocket, the point at which that staging occurs can be as high as Mach 10. But it's going away from the launch site at 10 times the speed of sound. So in order to get back to the launch site, you would have to have enough fuel and oxygen to reverse out that velocity and boost back all the way to the launch site. And you just don't have, the physics of it don't really allow you to have that much. It's not about saving money on fuel or anything, it's just physically impossible. Because another sort of thing about if you're in space is that there's nothing to react against. So, like whereas an aircraft can circle very easily because it's reacting against air, in vacuum there's nothing to react against. So the only way to go back the other direction is to apply just as much energy as it took you to go. If you want to go backwards, you have to apply just as much energy as it took you to go forwards. In fact, well, twice as much really, because you've got to zero it out, and then you've got to.
So you've got to land elsewhere.
Yeah. So bottom line is this thing is zinging out to sea at 10 times faster than a bullet.
At that point, it may well be over the ocean because the ocean covers most of the.
Oh, it's actually at the point of separation. It's not that far away. It's maybe 100 kilometers away from the launch site, but it is going like hell in the opposite, away from the launch site. So the only way to really land it is to have it continue on that arc, that ballistic arc, and then land far out to sea on a ship that's pre-positioned to a particular latitude and longitude, very, very precise, to within about a meter. And then the rocket will then go from vacuum through rarefied air at hypersonic velocity. So when it's in vacuum, it has to, obviously you can't use aero surfaces, you have to use nitrogen jets to control the attitude and position. And then as it starts to encounter the air, we use grid fins, because grid fins look like sort of like a waffle.
And it had great iron teeth.
They work quite well across a wide regime, from both very high velocity hypersonics through supersonic, transonic, and subsonic. So it's hard to have aero surfaces that work well across that entire regime. And then, so once the aero forces become high, it uses the four grid fins to sort of control its attitude.
To land itself.
Yeah, it's controlling it's controlling pitch, yaw, and roll with the grid fins. And then those grid fins will then position it to where it's fairly close to the ship, and then it will light, in this case, 3 of the 9 engines to arrest the velocity, and then drop to 1 engine for precision right before landing.
Right. Why is that important? Why has this moment been important for you?
Well, so in order to reuse the boost stage, which is about 70% of the cost of the rocket. So
which cost is that? How much is that?
Well, I mean, it's sort of on the order of $30 to $35 million.
We've been going to space for what, 50 years or something like that.
Yeah.
Nobody, until you started doing this, and Jeff Bezos' company has done it, the government never sort of saved the rockets.
But yeah.
Yeah.
They never saved the pallet of cash. Why not? And the Russians didn't either. I mean, what was the deal there?
Yeah, I mean, there was some attempt made to do that with the space shuttle, but there was no return. It's the first time that a rocket booster has returned to launch site from an orbital mission, and certainly the first time that there's been a landing on a ship out to sea.
But the regular rockets that went up that weren't designed like planes never tried to do this.
Right. The plane thing is not a good idea in my view. So the plane, and the reason I think is, like, intuitively it seems like a plane should work, but actually if you consider that really every mode of transport has a design that is appropriate to its medium, and if you're in space, wings are not very useful because there's no air.
The first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it.
And then if you want to go somewhere other than Earth, there's also no runways. So these are important considerations.
And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death.
So that's why when they went to the moon, they used propulsive landing.
Right, but what I'm saying was when they built the space shuttle, it sort of was like looked like a kind of bulbous
I think that appealed
plane.
to Congress, yeah.
Yeah. They went, cool, cool.
Yeah, it looked like an airplane.
Can you explain you know, Jeff Bezos.
Good one.
Jeff Bezos was here last night, and I asked him, what's the difference between what you're doing and what Elon Musk is doing? And he said, well, I think we have, I think he used the word like-minded in the general sense of it, and then he went on to explain some differences. But he talked about, and correct me if I'm misquoting him, but I think he was saying, this is all about laying the foundations of being able to do greater things by getting the basic infrastructure of being able to reuse these rockets down right. Is that correct? Do you have a similar starting point from him and your thinking process?
I think there's certainly some similarities of opinion. I think both Jeff and I believe that it's important for the future to be a spacefaring civilization and ultimately be out there among the stars. And I think,
though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord.
I think that's the exciting, inspiring future that I think certainly people in this room want.
For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God.
I mean, I think when I say, multi-planet species, like, that's really what we want to be. It's not like, still being a single planet species but moving planets. It's really being a multi-planet species and having civilization and life as we know it extend beyond Earth to the rest of the solar system and ultimately to other star systems.
I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High.
I think that's the thing. That's the future that's exciting and inspiring, and I think that's what, you need things like that to be glad to wake up in the morning. Like life can't be just about solving problems. Like, there have to be things that are inspiring and exciting that make you glad to be alive.
And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven.
So in the immediate time frame, what is your goal for SpaceX now that you've done this, which is a huge accomplishment? What is the plan for you in the immediate time and then the longer range?
Sure. So we plan to refly one of the landed rocket boosters, hopefully in about 2 or 3 months, something like that. And then so that'll be an important milestone. So far, the stages are looking like quite good, even though they come through quite. It's a really difficult re-entry situation, but they're looking like they're in good shape, and we now have 4 of them. So we want to start reflying them, towards the end of summer, and then hopefully by the end of this year we'll be launching Falcon Heavy, which will be the most powerful rocket in the world by more than a factor of 2. So Falcon Heavy will be on the order of 5 million pounds of thrust on liftoff, which is about 2/3 the size of a Saturn V.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
that's the rocket that took the astronauts to the moon.
Right, exactly.
So,
in fact, we're launching from the same pad, from
very same pad,
from the Apollo 11 pad.
And deceived them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast.
The launches will take place, every 2 to 4 weeks. There's quite a high launch cadence.
That's a much faster cadence than NASA had, right?
Yeah, it'll be more launches than anything else in the world.
And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. And he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people.
So more than Russia, more than Europe, more than China by next year, certainly.
And largely to deliver customers'
Yeah,
satellites.
there's a lot of broadcast and communication satellites that are going to geosynchronous orbit.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll also be launching the new Iridium constellation.
Mm-hmm.
So that Iridium's got a next generation constellation of satellites, I think 60 or 70 satellites, quite decent sized satellites. That'll be, I think, many orders of magnitude improvement over the current Iridium system. So we'll be able to have global broadband. So that'll be a whole bunch of launches. And and then next year we'll be flying Dragon version 2, which is the one that's capable of taking up to 7 astronauts to the space station.
Mm-hmm.
I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things.
In fact, Dragon 2 really is, it's a propulsive lander as well, and it'll be it's intended to carry astronauts to the space station, but it's also capable of being a general science delivery platform to anywhere in the solar system. So,
so where are you going with it?
We're going to send one to Mars in 2018.
And there appeared another wonder in heaven. And behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads.
Now, let's talk about
wait. 2018, that's for sure.
Yeah, a couple of years.
Okay. Now, will you be on that flight?
No.
You have talked about this. You said you don't want you want to die on Mars, just not on landing, right? Is that correct?
Well, I think if you're going to choose a place to die, then Mars is probably, not a bad choice.
All right.
But you're not ready.
It's not some sort of Martian death wish or something. But if you're going to be born on Earth, die on Mars.
So sending this up to Mars 2018, right? Sending this up to Mars 2018, when will someone like you get there from your plans?
Sure, so the 2018 mission would be our Dragon version 2.
Right.
And I think if things go according to plan, we should be able to launch people probably in 2024 with arrival in 2025.
And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live.
What's the solution?
Yeah, so I think I think it's to essentially, I think one of the solutions that seems maybe the best one is to have an AI layer. If you think of you've got your limbic system, your cortex, and then a digital layer, a sort of a third layer above the cortex, that could work well and symbiotically with you. Just as your cortex works symbiotically with your limbic system, your sort of a third digital layer could work symbiotically with the rest.
This is something that's surgically inserted or bred into the species, or what?
The fundamental limitation is input-output. So We already have, we're already a cyborg. It's just that, I mean, you have a digital version of yourself or partial version of yourself online in the form of your emails and your social media and all the things that you do. And you have basically superpowers in that with your computer and your phone and the applications that are there. You have more power than the President of the United States had 20 years ago. Like you can answer any question, you can video conference with anyone anywhere, you can send a message to millions of people instantly. You know, you just do incredible things. And, but the constraint is input-output. So we're I/O bound, particularly output bound. I mean, like your output level is so low. It's like, particularly on a phone, like your two thumbs are sort of tapping away. This is ridiculously slow. Our input is much better because we have a high bandwidth visual interface to the brain. Like our eyes take in a lot of data. So there's many orders of magnitude difference between input and output. So mostly, effectively merging in a symbiotic way with digital intelligence revolves around eliminating the I/O constraint. So it'd be some sort of direct cortical interface.
And you called it a neural lace?
Neural lace, yeah.
It's totally not Google Glass, right?
No, I'm talking about something
but it's
which...
like you wear it? Or
No, I mean, it would be... I mean, there are a few ways to approach this, but some sort of interface directly with your cortical neurons particularly.
But doesn't that imply surgical insertion?
Not necessarily. You could go through the veins and arteries because that provides a complete roadway to all of your neurons. Your neurons are very heavy users of energy, so they need high blood flow. So you automatically, with your veins and arteries, have a road network to your neurons.
Still some kind of surgery, right? Some kind of surgery. Right?
Yes, but you could insert something, you know, basically, you know, into the jugular, and have. It gets macabre, but
it sounds really easy and.
It doesn't involve.
Risk-free.
It doesn't involve, you know, like chopping your skull off or anything like that.
That's good.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, if we can figure out how to establish a high bandwidth neural interface
with ourselves,
with your digital self, effectively, then you're no longer a house cat.
You can see the International Space Station with your naked eye. I've seen it. You know, you look up and people are looking at it and they got their binoculars and they're looking at it, and you know, it's a little light dot and it's moving. No.
And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is.
Wherever it is, I don't like it, and I'm getting out of here.
And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world. When they behold the beast, they behold the beast, they behold the beast, they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. And there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was, and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. For he is Lord of lords, and King of kings, and they that are with him are called, and chosen, and faithful.
Show you something in 1 John chapter 2 verse 26. These things I have written unto you concerning them that seduce you. We need to start understanding who our enemy is. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. We need to take these words seriously. Let's look at the word seduce. Leading astray. 4105 Strong's. Let's look at this. It is the root of the English term planet. Wandering body. This term nearly always conveys the sin of roaming. I lead astray, deceive, cause to wander.
Him that lifteth himself up in his brigandine, and spare ye not her young men, destroy ye utterly all her host. And against him that lifteth himself up in his brigandine, and against him that lifteth himself up in his brigandine, and spare ye not her young men, destroy ye utterly all her host.
And I went round to a place where nothing was made, and I saw a terrible thing, neither the high heaven nor the firm ground, but a desert place, prepared and terrible. And there I saw 7 stars of heaven bound on it together, like great mountains, and burning like fire. 7 stars, like great burning mountains.
And the second angel sounded, and as it were, a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and the 3rd part of the sea became blood, and the 3rd part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and the 3rd part of the ships were destroyed. And the 3rd angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the 3rd part of the rivers, and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. And the 3rd part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter.
Then I said, For what sin have they been bound, and why have they been thrown here? And Uriel, one of the holy angels, who was with me and led me, spoke to me and said, Enoch, about whom do you ask? About whom do you inquire, ask, and care? These are some of the stars which transgress the command of the Lord Most High, and they have been bound here until 10,000 ages are completed, the number of days of their sin.
And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman sitteth.
And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying,
Babylon the Great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies.
And I heard another voice from heaven saying,
Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities.
And from there I went to another place, more terrible than this. And I saw a terrible thing. There was a great fire there, which burnt and blazed, and the place had no cleft reaching into the abyss, full of great pillars of fire, which were made to fall. Neither its extent nor its size could I see, nor could I see its source. Then I said, How terrible this place is, and how painful to look at. Then Uriel, one of the holy angels, who was with me, answered me. He answered me and said to me, Enoch, why do you have such fear and terror because of this terrible place and before this pain? And he said to me, This place is the prison of the angels, and there they will be held forever. 7 stars like great burning mountains, and like a spirit questioning me, the angels said, This is the place of the end of heaven and earth. This is the prison for the stars of heaven and the host of heaven. And the stars which roll over the fire, these are the ones which transgressed the command of the Lord from the beginning of their rising, because they did not come out at their proper times. And he was angry with them, and bound them until the time of the consummation of their sin, in the year of mystery. And Uriel said to me, The spirits of the angels who were promiscuous with women will stand here, and they, assuming many forms, made men unclean, and will lead men astray, so that they sacrifice to demons as gods. And there I saw 7 stars of heaven bound on it together, like great mountains, and burning like fire. This place is the prison of the angels, and there they will be held forever. And Uriel said to me, The spirits of the angels who were promiscuous with women will stand here, and they, assuming many forms, made men unclean, and will lead men astray, so that they sacrifice to demons as gods. And they will stand there until the great judgment, on which they will be judged, so that an end will be made of them.
And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman sitteth. And the beast that was, and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition.
Mystery. Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints, and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And the angel said unto me,
Wherefore didst thou marvel? And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman sitteth, and the beast that was, and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast.
Babylon the Great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird.
America will lead mankind to the stars once again. The Johnson Space Center knows well the high cost of inaction. The men and women of NASA have always been committed to American leadership in space, but too often our policymakers have failed to match your conviction with action and investment for the future. The last decade is proof. The end of the Space Shuttle program in 2011 left America without a viable human space launch program.
And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death. And his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast.
While I was a member of Congress, I actually had the opportunity to attend 3 different shuttle launches. Sadly, for more than 7 years, we've been forced to hitch a ride to space. Many Americans don't know that we've actually been forced to pay Russia to carry American astronauts to the International Space Station. And today, that cost runs about $82 million per seat.
And his feet were as the feet of a bear. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. The beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And his feet were as the feet of a bear.
Those days are about to be over.
And his deadly wound was healed.
I'm going to make you a promise. Soon and very soon, American astronauts will return to space on American rockets launched from American soil. You know, when we ended the shuttle program, it was more than a loss of momentum, though. It was really a tremendous loss for America's space workforce.
The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it.
The end of the Space Shuttle program meant that many of our leading researchers, technicians, and space professionals no longer had a mission. Here at the Johnson Space Center alone, some 3,200 contractors were laid off. Cutbacks and consequences rippled through universities, research labs, our space industrial base, and even the Department of Defense. I mean, these were men and women who you knew, you worked with. They were men and women of creativity and intellect and unparalleled skill, but they were frankly victims of our government's short-sightedness in those days. America lost nearly a decade of space experience. We worked very closely with private industry to deliver critical cargo and material to the International Space Station.
And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority.
Through the Commercial Resupply Services, which has already successfully completed 23 different missions with more on the way.
And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority.
As we speak, you're making remarkable progress on the Commercial Crew Program. Earlier this month, as President Trump celebrated himself, NASA announced the astronauts who will conduct the first flights on Boeing's Starliner and SpaceX Dragon, and they'll be going as early as next year. America will not ever abandon the critical domain of space.
Then I lifted up mine eyes, and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. I saw the ram pushing westward, and northward, and southward, so that no beasts might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. But he did according to his will, and became great. And as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and brake his 2 horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground, and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great toward the south, and toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. And it waxed great, even to the host of heaven. And it cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground, and stamped upon them. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away.
And there appeared another wonder in heaven. And behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born.
T-minus 10.
10.
9.
9.
8.
8.
7. 6. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. And we have ignition. The Super Dracos have ignited and are pushing the Crew Dragon off the pad. Engines have shut down as planned after about a 5.5 second burn. The trunk is detached.
Trunk deployed.
Dragon is tumbling as planned. The drogue chute is deployed as planned.
Drogue is good.